gentlemen, this episode is with Luke Sullivan. He's the man that wrote the book. It was one of the few required readings at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and so many other undergraduate advertising programs. If you don't recognize his name, you might recognize his book, Hey Whipple, Squeeze This, a guide to creating great advertising. And after 32 years in the advertising business at elite agencies like Fallon, the Martin Agency, and GSD&M, author and speaker Luke Sullivan is now retired. Even though he's retired, he's still releasing the 6th edition of Hey Whipple. That will come out mid-February. In addition, he still blogs and offers speaking engagements on his website, heywhipple.com. He was recently the advertising department chair at the Savannah College of Art and Design, also known as SCAD, but you'll learn what happened there early on in this episode. It's an instant classic. I reread Whipple in preparation, and you should reread it too if it's been some time, and if you haven't read it yet, you got to get it on your list. We talk about breaking into advertising, and he talks stories and gives plenty of advice. You have to listen to this episode no matter where you are at in your career. But before we start, Luke and I mentioned Chicago Portfolio School a couple times in this episode. Chicago Portfolio School preaches very similar things that Luke says today. It's a 1-year program that will help you break into advertising and some of those legendary agencies too, like the ones Luke mentions today, and you can visit and learn more about them and their work at chicagoportfolio.com. Or you can talk to me about it. You can also connect with Luke by visiting our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. On Instagram, one word, Breaking and Entering Pod. There you will see his recommended resources tailored just for you. You have to go there though. Now, on with the show. And before I even begin, I want to mention I was a sophomore when I first read this book. I was worried about breaking it, and then now I'm on the other side. It's been a wonderful moment talking with this author, talking with you all. I'm glad to share it with you. So here's the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schallenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Luke Sullivan on the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. Luke, I am so excited to have you on. I've read your book, and I'm sure most of the listeners have read some iteration of your book in college by requirement. That's what we had to do at U of I. So I'm excited to have you on to talk about your book, what you're doing, and of course, advice you have for our listeners. It's going to be awesome.
Gino, let's wait here just for a minute for the audience, the applause to die down. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, it's deafening.
It's crazy. People were knocking on my door at the green room.
Yeah.
I'm really sick of this shit. I really am.
Love it.
It's nice to be here. So thanks for having me, Gino.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, like I said in the beginning, like I read your book my sophomore year, and we talked about before. Peter Sheldon was my professor at University of Illinois.
Nice guy.
You know, I'm sure you know a good amount of my past guests on here, and I know all my guests probably know who you are. But tell us about yourself. Who is Luke Sullivan? What are you up to today?
Let's see. That's kind of personal. So let me get personal back at you. And Gino, I want to know your how you identify as a gender. I want to know. I'm just kidding. I identify as male, and I'm 67 years old, and I worked in the business for 34 years at what many would regard as elite agencies, the Martin Agency, Fallon, McGilligan, certainly. And then I got out of the business in 2011. And I became a teacher at Savannah College of Art and Design, which the kids there get a very good education, but I have many problems with the management of that joint. I was just forced to resign because I did not want to teach on ground during the COVID crisis. The Georgia map was bright red, and I said, no, I'll continue teaching online. They said, no, that's breach of contract, and forced me to resign and fined me $5,000 to boot. So I say, fuck them.
Fuck them.
Yeah. But you know what? God, I enjoyed doing that. And I miss all those kids. I really felt very bad last fall when that happened because there were, some 80 kids signed up. We were just talking about Chicago Portfolio School there and how it's hard to move classes around and to maintain the inventory of professors and class loads, et cetera, et cetera. And suddenly, with 2 days before class, 90 of these kids said, just what? So I felt pretty darn bad, but nothing I could do about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I'm retired. I just spent the entire, it was almost an entire year. I decided to rewrite a new version of Hey Whipple January 8th last year. I keep a diary, so I know these things. And yep. And I wrote and studied and wrote and studied and researched and wrote and studied and researched all year long. They told me they need the manuscript by August 31st. So it's about 9 months, 8 months of work. And it was a good amount of work. The deal is I wasn't working during the summer. So it was, a good 10-hour day writing and researching for all that time. I'm really proud of the 6th edition. You just showed me a minute ago. It was very kind of you to talk nicely about the book. Yeah, there you're showing me that 1st edition cover from the year 1998. Gino, how old were you in 1998?
Probably one year old. Yeah.
So both that book and you are outdated now, my friend.
Yeah,
you're just outdated. I'm kidding you. The 6th edition is just far and away the best one ever. I update them every edition. This is the 6th one, and I try to add new work, but I also try to cover the huge changes going on in the industry.
What's different from this first one to the latest one?
Oh my word, that first one.
This first one's good though. It's got all the classics, the fundamentals.
Good. Well, the fundamentals are good, and you know what? Interestingly, the first chapters of the 6th edition are they're not unchanged, but they are just updated. But the least changed of all the chapters in the book is the how-to concept part and some of the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling. Some of those essentials do not change, and so yes, I could lift some paragraphs unaltered from the 1st edition here and there. But there's entire new chapters. I don't know how I put off rewriting the copywriting chapter as long as I did, but that is a fat new chapter, completely reworked. Also, the last chapter on how to get a job and how to prep your portfolio, and that one I taught a class, as they probably teach at Chicago Portfolio class. At SCAD, it was called Career Strategies in Advertising, and it was all about getting a job. And I taught that for many years. And so I took all the learning and the lectures and everything that I studied and researched and found out along the way and severely updated that last chapter in Hey Whipple. So
it's got to change, yeah.
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
What can you talk about some of those changes that you made recently? Maybe allude to some of those without giving them all away that can help our audience as they're breaking into the industry. That's the whole point of this podcast.
Well, how about this? Let me just. I'm going to crack open. Chapter 17 here. I haven't got a copy here. I'm just looking at the original manuscript.
Okay.
Its title is called "Just Start World War III," which is my cheerful way. The subtitle is "What It Takes to Get into the Business." And as I lectured my students, I made a dark joke over and over and over again that you're not going to get a job. It's not going to come find you. You have to go out and beat the bushes to find it. And it's more than just sending out. I mean, I had so many kids who in the very beginning would say, "Oh, I'm really ready to go. I sent off 5 emails to my wish list agencies." And that is not World War III. That is a skirmish in the bushes out in front of your house.
Okay.
World War III in my class, the kids had to do what I call a hit list, and the hit list is a list of 100 agencies that you would be willing to work at. Sure, your dream agencies all up at the top there. That's fine, but the assignment wasn't completed if you sent me in your dream agency. I want to see every agency you can possibly see yourself working at. And I don't want to just see the damn name. I want to see the recruiter's email and recruiter's phone number. I want to see,
Oh, wow.
I want to see the email of a junior art director or a junior copywriter that you're going to start networking with. I want to see the list of the current clients right there, so that when you write when you begin World War III with your huge email blast out there, you'll be able to customize each email to each one of these agencies so that you can open with. And I usually used to give this sort of here's my virtual email, email out to a recruiter, dear Janet, my name is Luke Sullivan. I just graduated as a copywriter from Champaign-Urbana. I would love to work at the Martin Agency. I'm crazy about the work you guys do for, Oreo. Here's a copy of here's the link to my portfolio. And as for me, and then this is always the tough part for the kids to write, but you really do need to write a single sentence. Try to keep it to a single sentence that humanizes you in some way, shape, or form, because these poor recruiters get these emails by the metric shit ton, and they have to make a quick decision. And if you can leaven your otherwise, hardworking, fact-packed little 5-sentence email with a little one sentence that says something that brings you to life. And the one I used, I just wrote it one day 5 years ago, and I plugged it into the lecture and never changed it. As for me, as a writer, I'm also a reader, and my favorite things are my collection of first edition Ray Bradbury science fiction novels. Okay. I love the smell of books. This isn't too creepy. Other people like it too. Something like that.
Okay.
So here, I'm talking about how the books smell, and I'm trying to get a job. But what it says, it's number one, it's relevant. I've humanized myself. I've credentialized myself already with where I went to school. I've told them why I've come calling to their agency. This is not a mass ass email. If you cannot say why you want to work at an agency, why should anybody give a shit listening to your email? It's like, it says, I don't care where I work, I'm going to email this to you. And then you close off with a little bit of humanity. In this case, it is relevant. As a writer, I read. I want writers who read. And I added this quirky little thing about book smell. So that's an example of one of the assignments we had in my class, and it's covered well in this chapter, Just Start World War III, in the new edition.
And I love how you're starting World War III. It's a big deal. And then you even mention email blasts.
Yep.
You got to blast them. It's blitzkrieg. You got to go hard with these. I love it.
But you have to leaven that remark also with, as part of this presentation I do in class, and certainly in the chapter, is that, yes, you do start World War III. You start on a wide front. The way I say it is, you send in the Army, the Navy, the Secret Service. You send in spies and paratroopers and everything. If you have a loan from a bank, they're going to come find you. Mine did when I was in college, 6 months after school. Ding dong, where's my money? And there is nothing more important. These kids know this, but they do need to be reminded that this shit is not going to just happen. And if you want to get in earlier rather than late, then you should start World War III. Part of that involves, yes, email blasts, but the deal is, and I think you know this too, Gino, is that you don't hound people. You keep a track of who you've emailed. You just keep this all on some kind of tracking system. You can buy that software anywhere, so that I know who I talked to, when I talked to them, what I said. And if they write back, I keep track of that too. So that you don't want to be one of these, you don't want to lurk. You don't want to,
you don't want to be a pest.
You don't want to be a pest. So you don't want to have a restraining order written out to you. You got to remember, these poor recruiters, they deal with thousands of emails a week, thousands. So if your email was written well and it said what it needed to say and why you came calling and gave your credentials and gave you a quick link, and they do write back to you, this is pretty good. I'll get back to you. We'll let them get back to you.
Right.
Take a deep breath. if they liked you now, they're going to still like you 2 weeks from now.
Yep.
Yes, maybe they will find somebody better, but you writing within a week is not going to make them like you more.
You know what we say though here
What?
is that your network is only as good as your book. Networking won't really matter if your book's not that great.
Oh, of course, yes, no question about it.
So focus on the book first.
Oh,
And then you
yes,
go and start World War III.
exactly. Well, that's why this career strategy class is the last thing the kids take.
Yeah, of course.
And it all assumes that your book is perfected down to the pixel.
Yep.
That's when I say yes. Now it's time to start creating the hit list.
I think students don't understand that though, Luke. I think we see it here, and I've talked to students outside other schools and undergrads. I've talked to them. They start creating their website before their campaigns are even finished.
We had another class. I'm sure other schools have similar classes. This was just called Final Portfolio. And that's really the first, and it was called self-branding. That was really the first time in the 4-year program where there's any thought given to packaging your work. First, you got to have the work.
Yep.
But I understand it's sort of there's something, very pleasing to the ego, to the pride to see, look at that thing. It sparkles. There's some moving elements on it. Oh, it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just bullshit. It's bullshit until you have absolutely great work.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to change subject real quick. I want to talk about you a little bit.
Okay.
Add some credibility, more so than if people haven't read your book, Hey Whipple, Squeeze This. They're probably pretty foolish for that. They're looking to get in advertising. But let's talk about your break-in. Because it said I read here that you loved cartoons growing up.
Yep.
Is it correct that you went pre-med for the money? It says here. And I don't know. Did you go to a psych major? What was your college route? I said I wrote down history of cereal boxes when I was rereading your book. What was I writing here in my notes?
That stuff actually is still in the 6th edition, unchanged. It's just a quick history of where I came from. I luckily grew up with a very smart mom. My dad was smart too, but he was alcoholic and died when he was 45. But my mom was a writer, and I'm lucky to have several writer brothers. We're just a family of writers. And it was a very, I don't want to make us look like eggheads, intellectual household, but we were a bunch of Minnesota Democrats who were all pissed off at Nixon. And we talked Noam Chomsky and the Vietnam War around the Walter Cronkite and the news at the dinner table, and fairly media savvy from the get-go. I was also a nerd. I loved Marvel comics. I used to have a collection which would be worth now hundreds of thousands of dollars had it not been accidentally thrown away after a stay and a quick move out of an apartment complex where that storage closet was not emptied. Just complete collection of Spider-Man through probably 100 and Daredevil and Hulk and Submariner and Avengers, all of it. I just loved. So here's the thing. I'm down at my mom's, she's still alive. She's 98.
Wow.
She lived for a while on a farm, and because she was such a good mom, she saved all the things that my 5 brothers and I did as children, each with their own box. And in this box, one day I went down into her basement. Here's my old box. I'm going through looking at shit. And I realized, and this is before I got into the business, I was still working as an unskilled laborer on rehabbing old apartment houses. And I'm down there looking at this thing, and I see all this box full of cartoons, of comic books, of silly drawings, of stories. And 2 and 2 went together, and I thought, wow, words and pictures equals advertising. It never was a clearer moment to me in which way I'm supposed to go than that. And I came out after that knowing what I was going to do. Not many people get that lucky. My wife knew she wanted to be advertising in high school. It took me a much longer time to get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where did she work?
She worked at the time I met her. She worked at a great place in Richmond called Ford and Westbrook, and then she worked in the Martin Agency, and then she worked at Carmichael Lynch.
Was she a writer, art director?
A writer, Curlin Reed.
Wow.
Yep.
Who wrote better ads?
Who wrote better ads?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get her in here before I answer that question.
Okay.
Um,
She'll probably be listening. So.
Well, she's funnier than me. So what does that say?
Okay.
where were we going with this? Oh, yes. So I got an F in chemistry in my first thing in college. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
before I went down my mom's basement and did that thing. I simply wanted money. I grew up rich. My dad was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic, and I wanted give me more of that. But
Nice.
I didn't see any quick direction other than med school. I took psychology only because it interested me after I bailed on pre-med. And even after I graduated with a degree in psychology, what the fuck am I going to do with this?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with it? To this day, I'm just going to shift gears on you quickly. My favorite campaign I ever did in my 4 years of being in the business was a radio campaign. You can hear it on my website, which is currently undergoing some changes, but it's still there. It's up in the nav bar, and it's just a radio, and it's called Dunwoody. The Dunwoody Technical School of Minneapolis, Minnesota was a teeny little know-nothing account that Pat Fallon probably took on as a favor to a friend. And it was the reason why it's my favorite work is that the client never changed a single syllable of
Nice.
anything I wrote. So if it sucks because of me. And if it's any good, well, I'll take some credit. But it's all there now. And one of the reasons why I thought of it is that my strategy, which I just got to think up myself, was Dunwoody Technical School teaches students how to become plumbers or welders or heating and air conditioning, ductwork people, real shit, real skills where you can make things. And so, of course, their graduates, go on to get jobs. So I made fun of schmucks like me who had a liberal arts degree and who the fuck cares,
Right.
I think I really beat up on art history majors.
Oh, yeah.
And it's good to have conflict in your narrative. And so Dunwoody was the place that gave you real jobs for real things that people needed. And I'm very proud of that work. So I had the same problem coming out of my school. I was just kind of a clueless kid with a liberal arts degree that I just hope they restart rethinking all this stuff in all of our colleges. Number one, they all are too expensive.
Yes.
And number two, they need to take a hard look at the practicality of what they're teaching.
Yes, I agree. But my question now stands. So you went psych major. How did you get your first job? You said you got it took you some time, but you said you got your first job with the legend, Tom McElligott. And You said in the book, you kind of skipped over this. I think in the first edition, I don't know if you might have made changes. You said you got your foot in the door, but how'd you get your foot in the door?
How I got my foot in the door was networking, which is covered in this same Just Start World War III networking. Okay. And my network, because this is before the web, this is before fire. My network included my best friend from college, Steve Wolf, who's just still my best friend. And his brother-in-law was named David Bell. If you look him up, you'll see eventually became the top guy at a huge holding company. But at the time, he was the president of a local office of a small agency based in Omaha called Bozell and Jacobs. Okay. I was delighted to hear that I had a connection there because while I was working at a department store setting typography in their advertising department, that's what I did for a full year before I broke into the business.
Yes.
I came upon a local awards annual of what they called the show. It's the local Addie show in Minneapolis. And it was just dominated by two particular people who just blew me away. And that's Ron Anderson and Tom McElligott. And I kept seeing these guys. They worked at this place called Lunch Hour Limited. What's that? Is that an agency? And what's this other place? Bozell. Lunch Hour was Tom and Pat Fallon's fun little freelance thing on the side. But Tom got his paycheck from Bozell. And so I went through my Steve to David Bell, sent a thing. They said, well, I'll send what you sent to me on to those guys. What I'd made is a really stupid mailer that I might show it to people nowadays if I'm in the room so that I can talk them down and let them know that I'm not insane, what I sent them. But it was a very silly, fluffy piece that obviously is written by somebody with a slight screw loose, but really wants a job in advertising. And so that got their attention. And Tom, one day I was still in that goddamn typesetting room and the phone rang and I was just hoping. And I told the camera guy through the window, I got to get this phone. It's probably Tommy Gilligan to pick it up. Look, this is Tommy Gilligan. I just about pooped.
No way.
Yeah, so cool.
That's awesome.
Yes, and everybody out there is going to get a phone call like this. It's the beginning of a new career. I was suddenly being paid to do something I really loved, something I would have done for free.
Wow. What was it like working with Tommy Gilligan?
Tom is a really, really nice guy. I just saw him last summer, visited him in Minnesota. He was a really nice guy, and this is on his way up. I was about to say meteoric rise, but meteors don't go in that direction. So I'll just say rocket like rise. At Bozell, he was just building steam to open up Fallon. McGilligan Rice, he surrounded himself with very smart people. Tom wasn't the only great guy that I worked with there. One of my favorite people is a guy named Dick Thomas, also hired by Tom, who was a writer who died 2 years ago, bless his heart. He was a writer, and he was just a lovely man who really took the time to work with a sweaty young kid like me who came in with 4-hour-long radio scripts. I would come in to show that they give you a lot of radio back in those days. They did, because none of the senior writers really liked radio. I love it. But I would bring into Dick. I'd say, here's 3 radio ideas, and they're just clearly. I didn't do a word count. I didn't do a read through. It was just, hey, isn't this cool? Come on, Dick, read it. And he had a fan in his office, the little kind that rotates, brr, brr, brr. And he would more than once. He took my scripts and fed them into the fan like they was being chopped up. To say, look, bring this back when you. You've trimmed it to a recordable length and hand it back to me without really reading it. God, he was a good man. I really miss Dick Thomas. So working with Tom was very thoughtful. All the guys who used to work at Fallon have this Tom Gilligan impression of how when he looked down at work, standing in front of a desk, he put his hand on the back of his neck and furrow his brow and just think as he waited there nervously. And he never, I never saw him brutal. I never saw him do any of that bullshit stuff you hear some, hair bun creative directors do. This is bullshit. Why'd you show it to me? He'll say, I don't think you have anything here yet, or let's keep pushing. But he was this nice. God, it's great to have a Hall of Fame writer as your first creative director.
Oh yeah, that sets the tone very nicely. And I want to ask you, so how did you? So you saw the work that he was doing. You kind of followed along. And you knew that it was this guy, Tom, and you wanted to work for him. So, and that goes again with your 100 list assignment, that big email blast assignment that we were just talking about. You got to identify those movers and shakers that you want to work for. So my question to you, and you talk about some of these people at agencies, you call them the bully, Pullman Park. You mentioned the concept crusher. These are clients, right, that you don't want to necessarily work for. But how do you identify a great agency to work for? Good versus bad, one that, defies and one that just serves. What is the process today?
Well, you tell me, what do you think Jeff Epstein there at Chicago would say? What would his answer be? Because it's going to be the same as mine.
I'll tell you. So Jeff he tells me the difference between a good and bad agency is one that is a service agency that just kind of gives the client what they want,
right.
That punts on 4th down. Yep. And then a great agency is one that kind of punts on 7th down. And as he says. Yep. So it's
how would he say you go about finding these 7th down punt agencies?
Sure. I think what he would say, and I haven't had this, what he would say is that you need to get in the system. You need to talk with them, and you need to figure out who the people are that are making these ads. Yep. And you got to get a feel on the inside.
There you go.
Having those conversations.
Exactly what I would say. I list in the book several great places to begin your search for agencies, to see their work. The one show and CA annuals used to be the most reliable place to do it. But the annuals, I think they may have stopped doing them now because so much work is digital.
Yeah.
And so it's generally going to be an online search that you're doing. But still, the one show, if you go to oneclub.org right now, you're going to see a long list of last year's winners with the creative in there, as well as the names of the agencies and the writers and art directors and creative directors. Where else are you going to find this stuff except places like that? While I was writing Hey Whipple, I was also turned on to a really incredibly cool site that Cannes Film Festival wanted to take down. What the smart kids, I finally met these.
Oh, yes. I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I finally met these kids because I wrote them an email after I found this site and I said, you guys are fucking geniuses.
Right. Didn't they create like a unblock? They created a free system to see all the Cannes winners. That there was a paywall before.
Yep, there was a paywall, and it didn't do a coding thing. They simply took the list of winners and found them in other places and then reaggregated them on their own site, which you can still see. And they've expanded that. I met these kids. They're both. They were at least one of them was at In Ocean, and I, as a repayment, I said after I'm done writing this text, I asked. It was her, a woman named a Vietnamese woman, I think, named Nguyen, and I asked her, "Is this going to be taken down by Cannes again?" She says, "No, they can't do that the way we've got it built." And so I said, good, I'll put it in the book so that it can stand.
Good.
And this site is called lovetheworkmore.com.
Perfect.
And they've expanded it. They've expanded it. Now they went back, I think 4, 5, 6 years, the Cannes 2017 award list. You go on that site, go to the year, and she lists it. Gold winners, silver winners, bronze winners. It's fucking brilliant. Mm-hmm. And there's no better place for juniors in this business, seniors. I don't care who you are. Yeah. This is what we did at Fallon and Martin. We always studied the best work in the world.
You need to have a repertoire built up in your brain. You need to know the good work, no matter where you're at in your career.
Yep, you need to know it. And so there's other places listed in Hey Whipple, that chapter.
Other resources.
Resources to make sure that you know.
I love the quote that you said. You said somebody handed you a stack of CA annuals when you first started, and you said, "This is your advertising grad school right here. This stack of CA."
That was McGilligan. And the stack wasn't as tall as those stacks came to be eventually. I think it must have been just 10 New York art directors and 1 show annuals, and that's what I was handed my first month when they didn't have quite enough work to keep a sweaty little writer busy. And that was my first ad school, reading and reading and rereading and reading the body copy and reading the scripts and taking in everything I could. I tell my kids, if you're an apprentice now, what do apprentices do? They work with masters. So you study the masters.
Yeah. That's what Jeff says too.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Okay. I kind of want to leave it off with your idea of the creative process. You note the James Webb process, but for kids that might be in undergrad right now, they might not be getting the opportunity to work on a portfolio just yet. But what can they expect for their career if they're going into this and they say, hey, I want to be a copywriter or an art director? What are they going to be doing for the rest of their career? What does that process look like? And is it the same process or has it changed?
I think it's the same process. The deliverables are different. The thing that most disappointed me with student work is I did it for 10 years. Even the students that eventually got it and were very smart and very prepped, they came in with 5 good ads. Hey, what do you think? And I said, this is a very nice first page. Can you bring in 100 more, please?
Yes.
This rush to closure is basically a reaction to anxiety. When we face an empty page, we feel anxiety. I worry, am I cut out too much for myself? I'm not going to be a good writer. If I can't think of an idea right now, I must suck. And there's 100 things telling you that you suck, including yourself. And you want to reach a conclusion. This is it. And then if I can just get the creative director to like one of these 5, the anxiety goes away. Right. But you learn, number one, to deal with the anxiety because it's never going to go anywhere, ever. As long as you're a creative person, you will have anxiety because you want to make something beautiful. And none of us are capable of making something beautiful every time. So you sit down and you try to come up with something beautiful. Let's just say, we'll talk about a stinking ad. And I always drew. In fact, in the new edition of Whipple, I drew a page of one of my notebooks, um, and I would fill it with the nine, looked like 8.5 by 11 squares. I just didn't mean, I wasn't thinking print necessarily. I just needed a square to focus on.
Yep.
And I focused on the empty space, and the rule was fill it with something interesting. Don't fill it with an ad. If you want to do a headline, fine, throw it in there, but it better be fucking interesting. Is it a visual? Is it a something? Is it clip art? Is it a website? What is it? Why should I look at this fucking square? And you sit down, and I try to fill, I don't know, 6-7 pages of 9 ideas each at a sitting.
Okay.
And 3-hour sittings are really generally a good level. I read somewhere during my research that after 3 hours of banging your head on something, you're probably going to get to a little reduced return. And so you should take a break. And that's generally how I worked. And I would try to cut my working day into 2 big chunks of 3-hour sits. Now, of course, that was when I was just a lowly copywriter, and I was more in charge of how my day went. But once you get into the management and creative director stuff, that disappears. But as long as I was able to, I tried to manage my own time. I also read recently a marvelous couple of books I've read on managing your own creative energy and your time and your brain, that you should arrange your day with like activities. So try to do all your bullshit at a certain time. I generally try to do that right after lunch when everybody's a little tired. My brain's a little like meatloaf. That's when I'll do the fucking emails and the expense reports and the meetings if I can. And I would save my creative brain for the morning, and then maybe after 5 cups of coffee, starting around 3. My best brain was in the morning. So best part of the creative process, number one, is knowing when your brain is ready, and then optimizing your day around that, and then not settling for 5 fucking ideas. I still remember Alex Bogusky saying a client just killed some brilliant campaign, and was apologizing, and Bogusky said, "That's okay, we'll make more." And he could. He had an army of tireless. Well, they were all tireless kids cranking that stuff out, and he knew he could marshal those resources. Well, now you're your own army, and you have to marshal those resources and make more and more and more. You write until, as my friend who wrote the book Junior, he says, write until you go stupid. Just write until you are stupid, and somebody has to come in and take the pen out of your hand and leads you outside for an iced tea. Yep.
I'm looking at the book right now. It's like when you wrote you showed us the sample of your headlines for the bourbon. I don't know if that is in the latest edition, or has that changed?
No, that has not changed much at all. But that is not all the headlines I wrote. I'd say that's 1/20th.
Right, because there's so many, and I love the way how you tackle the different subject areas on how you can speak about the age of bourbon. You talked about age ideas itself, like how old the bourbon is, the history of the brand, that's time, the Kentucky ideas, how you drink it. I mean, and then you categorize your thinking, and then you can go from there.
Now, some people will say we can't do that at our agency. That was at Fallon, where there was a lot of strategic wiggle room, because strategy trusted creative, and likewise. And as long as we were on tone and saying the right things somewhere along the line, everybody was happy. But sometimes you get this brief that says, this is what it must say, da-da-da-da. Well, first answer to that is answer the fucking brief. Just do what's said. You don't have any argument until you answer that brief. Once you've got that nailed down to your satisfaction, that you think this is the best I can do, and I'm happy with this creative expression on this fucking brief, that's when you take these other angles that I mentioned in that chapter. Is maybe the brief isn't coming in it from the right angle. Maybe they shouldn't be talking about the beautiful color of this bourbon as it goes over the rocks, and talk instead about what 9 years of aging in a wooden barrel does to the bite of a bourbon. It's that exploration which is just essential to the creative process, and while a strategist, especially smart strategists, do a lot of that work for you, the finished brief is just not etched in stone. It's just not.
I love that. I love your relationship with with strategy in this book because it's not permanent, like you're saying. You wiggle around it. You can reframe the strategy. It's not etched in stone, is what you say and what you preach in the book.
Yep. Now there is a whole new chapter in this new book called "Tell the Truth and Run," and it is about strategy.
Okay.
I now give a big lecture that all of our audience listening can hire me to come to your agency.
Nice.
A big lecture on strategy that I'm very proud of. It too took me a full year of research to gather these thoughts and put them down as compellingly as I can to say, and this is called A Creative Writes the Brief. And everybody thinks creatives, they don't care about strategy, da. Of course we care about strategy, you fuck. It's just that the strategies that we get, generally the creative briefs we get, are just not very well thought through. They're just sort of something some junior account person wrote and got it approved, and now they just want you to stick to it. But strategy, the other mistake I saw my kids do in classes, they have to write their own strategy. And so it's kind of boring. They come in, I'm going to do ads. So come on, I want to do an ad. And they just rush off willy-nilly and want to do an ad. And no, you can't do that. You have to figure out what it is you're going to say first. Mm-hmm. So in this chapter, Tell the Truth and Run, on saying the right thing the right way, I combine two big lectures that I have. One on authenticity.
That's the word. Yep.
There you go. Good. I'm glad you're following. Authenticity. If what you're saying doesn't ring true, I don't care if it's true.
Yep.
If it doesn't sound true to this audience, or if it doesn't sound true to the brand, it's bullshit. Yep. Right? And most briefs are bullshit because they're just trying to make you believe something that you're probably not likely to believe.
I asked Remy James, one of your past students, current teacher here at Chicago Portfolio School, I go, what's the one thing that you really took away from, taking a class with Luke? He goes, authenticity.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
That's all he said. Yeah.
Well, it's the first lecture I give in any class, graduate, freshman, or otherwise, because mostly kids come into the class thinking they know advertising, and to a giant degree they do because they've grown up steeped in this stuff. But it's all 97% of it is terrible. It's just bad.
What was your theory on? I think Remy was also telling me that, and he has an episode. I could keep saying Remy, go listen to his episode after this. That's for our listeners too. But he also said that you were saying, I believe it was you, he was saying that advertising is too good nowadays. What is that accurate? You're saying that it is too focused. Was that accurate?
I don't remember this offhand. It may have been something I mentioned to Remy, but I'd have to be given the context in order to agree. Oh yeah, now I know what I meant by that. So I don't know.
I don't recall exactly either, but it seemed interesting at the time.
So these two concepts of authenticity and then the strategy and the brief, I've combined into one chapter, and they really belong together because until you get a strategic brief that is based on authentic truth, everything else is bullshit. Doesn't matter how cool your ad is, it just doesn't matter. So the strategy is everything, whether you call it the key message or the brand strategy, whatever it is, it has to be based on truth. Tell the truth and run. It's an old Yugoslavian proverb, and I just stole that for the title.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great information in your book. So where can they find this latest iteration? Is it out now? Where can we buy it? What's the situation with your latest book?
Well, I don't want to cause traffic accidents by just saying where they can find it. I mean, people could die,
Yeah, they're going to be
people could
running on the streets.
People could die. No, it's coming out February 23rd on Amazon.
Oh, it's coming. This is good timing.
Yeah, cool. February 23rd. I haven't seen a copy yet either. It's really a delight to get, as an author, to get a copy of a book you wrote, because all that work is just condensed. And this is the one I worked on hardest of all 6 editions. I poured over this son of a bitch, and I've rewritten things. And the day before I sent it off, I had to change something in the social media chapter. I was lucky to interview Andrew Keller, who used to be a huge big shot at Crispin during its most radioactive days.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Oh, they're still pretty awesome, but this was
Shit.
And Andrew's now a big shot at Facebook. And,
cool.
and I had
Meta.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a good long interview with him and with another strategist from Facebook who's now retired, Andy Blood out of Auckland down in New Zealand, who helped me a lot with the book. And those two guys helped me reframe my thinking on social media and how to build brand ecosystems using these, various technologies that make up each one of these Twitter.
Can you make me enjoy that? If I read it, will I enjoy it? Because I don't enjoy the social media. I don't like social media.
Yeah,
there, I said it.
Well, that's cool. Some people are just like that way. I think I begin that chapter with saying some people, kind of look down their nose at social media. But I tell students of the craft, well, dude, guess what? You're going to have to get over that because this is where clients live. They love every minute of it. It doesn't cost them nearly as much as any paid media. They can track the results in real time.
Yeah. So you're talking about a little bit of earned social, like that kind of, the unpaid portion of it.
Yes. I mean, you can. There's paid media which you can buy your way onto Facebook,
right.
or you can have just your free Facebook organic media with your own feed, and then the earned media, of course, is the sweet spot. Yeah. But no, I cannot make anybody care about it. It really is a personal feeling. I certainly felt that way for a long time. It just felt like bullshit to me. But the world changed.
Right.
The world changed, and people live and breathe this stuff. For the longest damn time, I looked down my nose at TikTok.
Sure.
And I had to get over that in order to rewrite.
I was the same way, and now I love it.
Yeah.
I love TikTok. I'm on it all the time.
Well, then you do like social media then?
Yeah, I don't like the advertising space for it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I interviewed the top guy, technological guy at Fallon, smart guy. And he gave me this great case history they did for Arby's. We won our TV back, and it was done entirely on TikTok. And the coolest thing that I learned from him, now, what is his name? I gotta give him a little bit of love here.
Yeah, give him a shout out.
Yeah, he was just so good. Where is it? I still get his damn it. Well, it's in the book. I just can't put my name on it. My finger on that thing. He told me this. Andrew said the same thing, Andrew Keller. He said, you should do with social media what other people do with social media. You should do your own. You should make things that can be fucked with. If that's a meme, fine. Fuck with your own advertising. The thing I learned from both these guys was the sense of play that is just so strong in these heavy users of social media. They're just fucking around. They like interesting stuff. It doesn't mean they like interesting stuff. It doesn't always have to be some meme joke. It can be, as long as it's interesting.
Yeah.
But for a brand to really engage in, especially on something like TikTok, which is really the least serious of all these platforms, in my opinion, is to play. Show up willing to play.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
It has to be interesting, as you said.
Yeah, well, the way I put it in the book, and I stole this from RGA, is it has to be entertaining, useful, or awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Entertaining can be just, oh, that's really cool. Share this funny video with my buddy Gino. Useful, oh, Gino needs to have this calculator of some kind of, send it over to him. And then awesome is just, what the fuck is that? Where anybody would just be, that's is what I'm working on. Useful, entertaining, or awesome.
Love it.
That's the key thing.
Yeah, that's a good formula. Better, it's easier said than done, but if you can achieve that, then that's the sweet spot.
Yep.
I love it. All right, Luke, that's all I got for you. Can people reach out to you if they have any questions, or do you prefer not to?
No, it's okay. I'll become a cranky old man one day. But for now, it's heywhipple@me.com. heywhipple@me.com.
Perfect.
And I've answered everybody my whole career long. I still get nice emails from people who are now big shots in the business, and they say, "Oh, you helped me when I was a junior," and it's so rewarding. So I'll still try to be that person.
Amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and all the work you've done and the book you wrote that we all read at University of Illinois. I'm sure other schools too. So on behalf of all our listeners, thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I'll see you later.
All right. Have a good one. Did you hear anything on this episode about a job you'd like to have someday, soon, in advertising, strategy, design? The kind of job where you use your brain and your creativity? If you did, chances are a portfolio can really help you get that job. That's where Chicago Portfolio School comes in. They have programs and classes that help you show off your thinking and get you the job you want. So visit them at chicagoportfolio.com. And if you drop my name, Gino, into the chat box, they'll send you more info and a cool Sharpie. Or just some more info. You can decide that. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.